All right, let's talk about Oscar Wilde. Now, here's a man whose entire life was this brilliant, dazzling performance, one that ended in absolute tragedy. You see, for Wilde, it wasn't enough to just write art. He wanted to live it. He treated his own personality like it was his greatest creation, a masterpiece he was constantly sculpting to provoke, to charm, to challenge. Basically, to get a reaction out of everyone. And a performance like that, it was bound to put him on a collision course with the super rigid, buttoned-up morality of his time. And that conflict, well, it shot him to the absolute heights of fame, only to then cause one of the most spectacular, infamous downfalls in history. So where does a guy like Oscar Wilde even come from? I mean, what makes a genius like that tick? To figure that out, we've got to go back, way back to his roots, long before he was the talk of London. Well, you could say Wilde was forged in this incredible furnace of his parents' home in Dublin. On one side, you have his father, a man of science, of logic, of institutional success. And on the other, his mother, a revolutionary poet full of fire and rebellion. And that duality, right? That constant pull between structure and subversion, that's the key. It would define pretty much his entire life. And don't for a second think he was just some flashy amateur. Look at this. His academic record was stellar. I mean, he absolutely mastered the classics at the best schools around, racking up top honors. And this wasn't just about getting a fancy degree. No, this was the bedrock. It was the deep intellectual foundation that made his wit so sharp and his rebellion so powerful. So, armed with this incredible education, Wilde heads to London. But he's not just there to write plays or poems. No. He's there to invent something totally new, a kind of celebrity where the artists themselves is the work of art. And how did he do it? He created this public persona, calling himself the Apostle of Beauty. And he had a uniform to go with it. We're talking velvet breeches, long hair, always with a single lily or a sunflower. It was all a performance, a walking, talking embodiment of his core belief. Art for art's sake. For him, art didn't need a moral, it didn't need a purpose. Its only job was to be beautiful. Period. And man, was he a brilliant marketer for his own brand. In 1882, he takes this whole act on the road. And get this, he delivers 140 lectures across North America. 140 in just 9 months. He basically turned himself and his philosophy into an international sensation. And this, right here, this is pure Wilde. It perfectly captures his mastery of the soundbite. Who else could turn a boring old customs declaration into a legendary boast that would make headlines everywhere? He wasn't just an artist, he was building a brand, one clever line at a time. Okay, so let's fast forward to the late 1880s, early 1890s, because this is when it all pays off. All that self-invention, all that branding, it works. Wilde hits the absolute zenith of his creative power and his fame. Just look at this explosion of creativity. In this incredibly short, intense 7-year period, he produces basically all of his major works. We're talking his controversial novel, his brilliant essays, and of course the witty, hilarious plays that made him the absolute toast of London. The man was simply unstoppable. But being this brilliant also meant being dangerous. His novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, was just scandalous to the Victorians. It was labeled immoral, distasteful. It was so controversial that the most suggestive passages had to be cut out, censored by his editor and even by Wilde himself, just to get it published in book form. Yeah, his performance was definitely starting to hit a nerve. So imagine this. You're at the absolute peak of your fame. You've got not one, but 2 hit plays running at the same time in London. You are the man. And it's at this exact moment that Oscar Wilde makes a single fatal decision, a choice that will bring everything crashing down. And the speed of his downfall is just shocking. Look at this timeline. We're talking a matter of months. He goes from being the most celebrated writer in London to convicted criminal. The accusation, the terrible decision to sue for libel, the arrest, the trials, it all happens in a terrifyingly quick spiral. Now, to really get what happened, you have to understand the law they used against him. It was called the Labouchere Amendment. And here's the crucial thing. It was incredibly vague. It criminalized acts of gross indecency between men, but it never actually defined what that meant.
So it wasn't really about proving someone did a specific thing. It became a tool to criminalize an identity, to criminalize being a gay man. It was, frankly, the perfect weapon to destroy someone like Oscar Wilde.
And so Wilde was sentenced to the absolute maximum penalty the law allowed: 2 years of hard labor. The curtain had come down. The performance was officially, brutally over. And the prison conditions, they were intentionally designed to break him. We're talking solitary confinement, constant hunger, and this soul-crushing, grueling work. It was a systematic effort to degrade him, to strip away every last bit of the brilliant man who had once been the King of London. But here's the thing about Wilde. Even in the absolute depths of that hell, he wrote. He produced De Profundis, this incredibly profound letter. And in it, he does something amazing. He reframes his own suffering. It's not just a punishment anymore, it's a journey, a path to a deeper truth, both spiritually and artistically. He literally turns his own tragedy into one last, powerful work of art.
After his release, he never went back to Britain. He couldn't. He fled to France, a bankrupt exile, forced to live under a fake name, separated from his own children. He died a broken man in Paris just 3 years later.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How does a man who died a disgraced, bankrupt criminal become the celebrated global icon that we know today? Well, because his story, it didn't end with his death. A huge part of the answer lies with his incredibly loyal friends, especially a man named Robert Ross. Ross basically became the guardian of Wilde's flame. He paid off all of Wilde's debts, he got his collected works published so people could actually read them, and he even commissioned that famous tomb in Paris, which became a site of pilgrimage. He simply refused to let the world forget Oscar Wilde. And what Ross started became this incredible, century-long journey of rehabilitation. It starts with publishing his work. Then you have scholars and even his own grandson digging up the real, uncensored trial records. And it all leads to this moment in 2017, when he receives a posthumous pardon under the Turing law, a pardon from the very same government that had destroyed him. When you look back, Wilde really was one of the first truly modern celebrities. A man who literally invented his own brand, who turned his personality into an icon. But he paid the ultimate price for it. And his story leaves us with this huge, lingering question. Oscar Wilde treated his life as his greatest masterpiece. So where do we draw the line? Does society have the right to judge the artist, or should we only ever judge the art they leave behind?